Hello, and welcome to Spotlight. And it's our discussion programme with all things Eurovision. And I am joined today with Steve Thornton of Wales. All right. And Steve, our topic today, is basically the question that I'm going to set you right now. Okay. We've all just kind of got over this Eurovision Song Contest, and Italy have won, of course, with Måneskin. We'll talk about them. But the question I'm going to set you right off, was Eurovision 2021 the best ever? You can't answer.
Well, bits of it I really liked, bits of it not so much. It's very hard deciding whether this is the best ever or not.
Yeah.
Because we're straight after it, and I always love the one we've just had. So
yeah, I know it was a very, very striking question to get us started here. But let's talk about what kind of went on, and also talk about the highlights and the lowlights. Talk about the scoring, and talk about how the EBU can maybe learn from this whole experience and carry it across into Italy, who of course will be hosting it next year. First time since Toto in 1991. Let's talk about,
we're in for a treat, aren't we?
Don't bring them back on. I better not say that. Anyway, let's talk about the highlights, in your opinion. What were the highlights for this year's contest in Rotterdam, of course?
Well, apart from having a 2-year build-up, which made it even more exciting, I don't think I can remember a more diverse and varied final. The quality of songs I thought was exceptional this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Having such variety with no clear front runner as we came into the final made a very, very exciting voting segment, I thought.
Mm-hmm. But the thing is with the songs that, these were brand new songs. It's not as if they were 2 years in the making. So there's something that's happened certainly this year for the quality of the songs to go to such a high level that, people were saying beforehand, yeah, the UK are hip, and then all of a sudden we've got zero. Any reasons, do you think, that why the songs perhaps were so good this year and diverse?
I think, given the break that we all had there last year, a lot of the artists found out very soon that they were going to be representing their countries.
Yeah.
And I think, building on what they had before, they had been given a lot of feedback on their past entry. So they were building on feedback they already had ready for Eurovision. And I think that really helped a lot of the artists build a song, a performance, a package that really worked.
So the secret basically is to get the artist as early as possible and give them loads of time to get something ready for the next year. So that brings me on to basically what went wrong with the UK entry. Because he did have 12 months. I mean, what was your take on the song? Was it a decent enough song to enter Eurovision, or did we get it wrong again?
I think the UK, it's a hard one, isn't it? I think we did have a good song compared with some of the more recent ones we've had. If we compare this to Michael Rice, I think this was a big step up. But when we're comparing it with the rest in the field in the final, who had also done quite a huge step up in some cases, we're still falling short. And I think a lot of what we're bringing to Eurovision as the UK is made for Eurovision. It's written as a almost background song, a chart-ready song, something inoffensive. We're not pushing any boundaries here. And a lot of countries this year, I think, were going quite way out with what they were doing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, for instance, the UK sending something like Ukraine did this year, or indeed Italy. We're sticking to a pattern that I think the BBC thinks will work, but hasn't worked for a decade. And I think that's where we went wrong.
Do you know, we were actually doing some reviews, and one of the things which I was looking for this year was originality. I really didn't like songs which sounded like somebody else. I wanted something different, and the Ukrainian song did stand out for me when I first listened to it. It was certainly very different. So did the Italian song, but it wasn't like my personal favorite. My personal favorite was actually the Lithuanian song. But the UK, would you say that was a low light for the contest? Or do you think, in fact, what happened with the United Kingdom this year turned out to be a highlight? If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying there. And in a strange way, I think us getting the 00 was a better result than if we had floundered around 20th, because it forces questions to be raised. And I think it forces the question here of what do we do next? If we had just landed at about, 20th, the BBC could have turned around and said, we put something in that was all right and we got a few points. This way, there has to be questions raised, I believe. And
do you think that one of the highlights for me, though, was, and I still watch it, was when James Newman stood up when he realised he'd got the 0, and everybody applauded him.
Yeah,
the crowd applauded him, and you saw the support he was getting from the rest of the competitors. Now, for me, that was a highlight.
Yeah,
it was a negative thing that happened, right? But everybody just seemed to get round him and support him, and he loved being part of this contest. And I keep watching it back, and I really do hope that kind of poo-poos people's thoughts, certainly in the United Kingdom, that we are disliked.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you're going to lose, that's the way to do it. He really took it in his stride there.
Yeah.
And I think James, as an artist, he really understood what Eurovision is about. He was getting into it. He was on side with it. And I thought the way he reacted to the 0 points there was fantastic.
Of course, he's written for Eurovision before. He wrote for Ireland a few years ago as well. But that was the highlight. Some highlights. I personally think the quality of the songs were great. I think that there was much more of a bond. We saw that with the James Newman. I think that the other good thing was that the presenters at this year's contest were professional. They were not contrived. There was no silliness. There was no attempts at humour. They were just there to do a job, and they did it well with loads of big smiles. I thought the Dutch put on a fantastic show. Under all the circumstances, I thought they were probably one of the best organisers that we've had in recent times. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. And to add to that, I was very, very impressed with how they handled the current circumstances. Yeah. We're all watching this in varying stages of lockdown across Europe. We know what's been going on. Some of the acts had difficulties, like Australia couldn't be there. Iceland were using their rehearsal clip, but they didn't fixate on that. It flowed very, very well, and it allowed some real escapism from the night. We knew what was going on. We knew why it was a slightly different contest, but they focused on the contest. And that I was really, really impressed with how they did that and how seamless they made this.
Yeah. What would you say that were the lowlights of this year's contest, if there were any?
Well, we always knew this wasn't going to be a normal year and a normal contest. And I do have to say I missed having the audience up on the stage, up towards the stage, all the flags, all of that. But we always knew that wasn't going to happen. And I think for certain countries, for instance, Ireland, when Leslie came out onto the catwalk, it did make it look quite empty, and it did make it seem quite like she was singing to no one at that stage. But we all knew that was happening. And to have an audience the size they did was fantastic. The other element that they brought in was the pre-recorded vocals, of course, which
do you think
as keen on?
You weren't keen on that?
No.
It's interesting because I mean, obviously, one of the things we'll talk about is what they can carry across. But let's just talk about the crowd, because you said that you missed the flags and stuff. I didn't miss that. I actually preferred this because I felt I could hear the songs more. If you go back to some of the older, not even older, I mean, a few years ago, you hear so much cheering and stuff like that it kind of puts you off. I liked the fact that I could hear the songs and I could watch the stage. I thought the staging was very, very good as well. Yeah, I think they did the right thing by moving the crowd back. They had to do it, obviously, because of, and I hope that they take that on board. It's something we'll talk about maybe later, because I wouldn't say that, in my opinion, that was a low light. But one of the things I was wanting to talk to you about, which I felt was a low light, was the accusations that were made against the Italian singer. Now, this all stemmed from a piece that I think the camera panned from Malta to Italy. You know, when did you start hearing this story? I mean, I think I saw it on Twitter, and then all of a sudden it was on main news. What's your take on all of this and how it all seemed to blow up?
I thought it was really bad, actually. I think a country getting their first win in such a long time, 30 years, wasn't it? And for the thing to be focused on immediately after was an accusation of drug taking just from the camera angle was really poor form. And it just detracted from what should have been celebrated there, which was a very well put together show and Italy winning for the first time in 30 years. Yeah.
And it was a real shame because it was brought up, I think, by a Swedish journalist at the press conference, and I think that it totally devastated them, didn't it? Suddenly they had this wonderful moment, and then they were suddenly brought crashing down to earth. But
and of course they've been completely cleared now.
Yeah, they have been cleared. And what gets me is that how anybody could have thought that with the so many people around them. And also, if you think about it, the Italian delegation were there as well. It wasn't just the group. Do you really honestly think that he's suddenly going to, bring something out onto the table with the world gazing on him and do something as silly as that?
And especially in the green room being in front of the audience like it was as well.
It was a really bad moment. And I fully I'm delighted with the way that the EBU handled it. They took it seriously, but they also showed the support to the Italians as well. But that was a bit of a low light, which then brings me on to the whole thing, and I'm going to be discussing this in a separate program, but the whole thing with social media and Eurovision. How social media reacted to this year's Eurovision? Have you been reading a lot of it? Do you engage in things like this, or do you just stay away from it because it's sometimes toxic?
I have a very small number of groups that I'm active in on social media relating to Eurovision. The rest I just find quite toxic at times. And I don't know whether that is just how things are now or whether that is a symptom of current times. But I'm not entirely sure how the wider social media has reacted to things lately, because I tend to give it a bit of a wide berth.
Yeah. It certainly has. It certainly plays its part, and that's why we've also had another controversy come out of the whole Eurovision. That's Malta.
Malta,
you know about the story with them, and they were trying to, I don't know, manipulate the betting and so that they could be talked about more. They raise the profile and stuff like that. So social media does play an important role now.
It does.
In selling a song. So do you think that the UK social media are perhaps just as guilty about the UK entry as, say, perhaps the BBC? Perhaps they just lambast the artist, lambast the song before it's even had a chance and create this negativity. Do you think that there's an element of truth there, or do you think that it's totally opposite?
I'm not entirely sure with that. I find, certainly just from the UK perspective here, the non-Eurovision media tends to be exceptionally negative towards Eurovision in general. The sort of inner sanctums this year, the fan community seem to have been very positive about the UK entry. So it's hard making any kind of comparison there with how they've scored. It's been quite interesting that the result of our score on Saturday doesn't seem to have been now blamed on everybody hates us and all the usual rhetoric that we get thrown at us, which is slightly different.
Well, let's talk about the actual scoring, because you talked about the result and stuff. Now, you've pulled something together which will appear on screen, which is fantastic. I love looking at these things, and it's really interesting because it got me thinking here, Steve, and I want to really kind of challenge you on this, because if you look at the semi-final one, all right, Croatia, they finished in the top 10 of the jury vote, and they finished in the top 10 of the televote, but they didn't make it. What's your take on that?
I think Croatia was a real casualty here. You notice as well that the jury gave them 57 points.
Yeah.
The televote gave them 53 points. So they were unified there. They both agreed. But we have some quite clear examples here of the jury favouring a pair of countries, the televote favouring another country, and it's skewing the overall result here.
And I mean, it's a little bit more clear cut in the second semi-final. There seemed to be a bit more agreement. I think the only difference would be Albania and Denmark. Denmark came higher in the televote, and we'll mention Denmark because I didn't think it was their best song this year, and I didn't think the performance was that great. But yeah, Denmark, they were the only difference really. But the first semi-final was a bit of it was a real shame for Croatia, because I actually did like the song. But then I looked even further, right, and there are only 5 jury members. Now, there's something far wrong, surely, in the voting, if it's still 50-50 and you have a televote, right, which has got millions of people voting, but then you also have a jury, a group of 5 people who have the same amount of clout as the televote. Do you think there needs to be change?
I don't, actually. I'm quite happy with the balance at the moment, because we've seen, although we've seen these differences, we've also seen what happens when there's 100% televote. And as viewers, we're looking for something quite different to the music professionals. And ultimately, this is a song contest. And I know what I like watching on telly. I don't have any musical know-how beyond that. So I'm quite happy to allow juries of professionals to vote, even if it doesn't necessarily mean my favourites get through every single time.
But what are they voting on then, do you think, these juries? Because, again, there was differences. With the UK song, there was like a jury member, I can't remember which country voted it in the 6th position, and another one voted 23rd. So what exactly are they looking for? Because I don't think it's a professional side of things. I think they would have to have a set guidelines. Do they have something like that?
I believe they have set guidelines, and I'd love to see them.
So, in other words, we don't know, do we? We don't know.
No.
So basically, then the jury members are just as much like the public. I mean, you could have a jury member who loves the orchestra, okay, and then decides that when it comes to electronic music, oh no, I'm not interested, and then he or she will put them, say, 26th, because he doesn't like that kind of music. Does that make sense? And what I'm trying to say is that the clout that these 5 people have it's almost outweighs the televote, and I think they need to change the percentages, don't you think?
I'm happy with the 50-50 percentages, but I think if I was going to make a change, I would change the number of jurors.
Yeah.
I think maybe having 100 jurors rather than 5 would make a fairer balance. And also having a clearer guideline on who they are, like how do you become a juror? Because having a look through the lists, the UK, I haven't got it in front of me, but I know there's a few singers in there, music producers.
Michelle Gale and Nicky Chapman. Now, Nicky Chapman was a part of the Simon Cowell's Pop Stars like 20 odd years ago. Okay, and she's involved in the music industry, but she's, and I'm not trying to be in any way ageist here, but she's of a certain age. She's probably around the same age as I am, right? Michelle Gale is probably in her 40s now. I could be wrong. I think she's in her 40s. But I think that if you look back to the old regional juries that the UK had in Song for Europe, we had a plethora of people sitting there. They were the jury, and they were of different ages. It worries me that this is not being looked at. And I do think if they have to increase the number of the jurors. I totally agree with you on that. If they don't do that, then they have to change the percentage to perhaps 60-40 or something. I don't know. But yeah, the juries hold a lot of power. And if we look at the final, you can see that they chose Switzerland, but Switzerland came 6th in the televote. Yeah. They chose Italy 4th, and Italy came top in the televote. Ukraine, this is where the big start of the big differences. Ukraine were 2nd and were 9th in the jury. Portugal were 7th in the jury, but finished in 19th position in the televote.
There were some huge points differences here. Ukraine 170 points difference. Malta 161 points. Yeah,
totally agree. I think that San Marino was a shocker of the night for me. They did so badly in the jury and also in the televote, which then kind of concludes to me that it doesn't matter how big the artist is. The public are not silly. They want a decent song. What happened with San Marino, do you think? Do you think there was a story in why they did so poorly in the televote?
I'm wondering if just simply having Flow Rider worked against them there. I wonder if having such a big name so randomly there got people looking at it going, what on earth's going on there? That's unfair.
Yeah, that's very true, because even I was thinking that. How did they manage to get Flow Rider? Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But it was certainly, it was a decent enough performance. And I do think that you talked in this, and I'm going to bring this up now, about the pre-recorded vocals. Is that something they should carry across into next year?
I think it is something they're going to carry across, but I'm
pleased with that then.
I don't like it. I really don't like it at all.
Good. So
although I might have to just deal with this one.
Right. What's your views on that then? Tell me, because we used them in the UK entry. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, to start with, the whole rationale here was in order to reduce the number of people, the number in the delegations, will allow you to have pre-recorded vocals. That makes zero sense if you still have 6 people on stage.
Yeah,
you haven't reduced anything. But that out of the way, I think in some cases the backing vocals were taking over slightly. It was creating an effect of almost like the singers were singing to playback. I found it quite distracting at times, and there were times as well where I think it enhanced the song, like Iceland. But when we're having a live performance, is it really in keeping with the ethos here to have 1,000 people in an orchestra, in a choir, I mean, as well? I'm not sure.
I know what you're saying.
I think we've just got to live with this now.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I also understand that music has changed and it continues to evolve. It is more music is definitely studio based, and there's so many different, I don't know, techniques used to create a decent pop song these days. Do you not think, though, with the opportunity to have this sort of pre-recorded backing soundtrack, that it would encourage perhaps a bigger name to perhaps throw their hat in the ring from the UK?
It could do. Because, like you say, there's these techniques and styles in modern music now that relies on recorded backing vocals, or just recorded vocals in general. And we saw this, didn't we, with the orchestras? The moment the orchestras go, new styles of music are coming through, and more modern styles of music are coming through.
Yeah.
So I think we will see that.
Yeah.
I just feel quite old now. I'm stuck in my ways.
No, do you know, it's something very interesting, because the BBC showed two old contests on BBC iPlayer, and I think they're still there. The 1974 contest and the 1998 contest. And I just decided to have a look through the 1998 contest. I was bored one night. And I actually didn't. I remember watching, when I first watched it, I thought it was brilliant. See, when I watched it again, and having Rotterdam still kind of stuck in my head, I thought it was boring. I thought the staging was poor. I thought the songs were actually poor. And I thought to myself, I didn't think like that a few years ago. I used to think it was one of the best contests. And even when I listened to the winner, Dana International and Diva, okay, I thought it was awful. And I thought that the contest has certainly moved on, and it needs to continue to move on, and it needs to attract more and more people to it. As long as the singer is singing live, then perhaps we should be okay with the pre-recorded vocals. But I remember Croatia in 1999 and Maria Magdalena, and I don't think they got the facts to tell them no backing vocals on the backing track, because I think it was the first year they had the backing tracks being used. And they tried so hard. You can listen to it. They put the echo up on Doris's microphone to try and disguise the fact that they had a backing, singers, because they'd made a mistake. And it really spoiled the whole song. And one of the things which I've done on this video channel is actually I went back into the actual video, and I've pushed up the levels to try and put it across the way that I would have loved to have seen it on the night. I think that it's the way forward, but I totally understand with yourself about, keeping it kind of traditional in the sense, keeping the live vocals alive. But that has brought me on to my final question. What things do you think, and maybe we've already discussed it, but what things should we carry across into next year?
I think a lot of what happened this year is standalone by nature of circumstance here. We've done the pre-recorded vocals, which I think is going to be the lasting legacy here. The variety of styles, the different languages, I think this is something that could be carried across. We've had many years, haven't we, where English is dominant.
Yeah.
The kind of generic pop style.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice if, certainly following this year, when 4 out of the top 5 were non-English songs and all very different genres, if countries continue to be quite experimental with what they're bringing to the contest, that's something I hope carries on.
And which song were you rooting for after you saw the live performances?
After the live, it was Ukraine.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Interesting. But Steve, I want to say thank you very much for taking time out to talk about Rotterdam 2021. We've come to the conclusion, I would guess, that it's up there, but not quite the best ever. In my opinion, I thought it was one of the best that we've had for a long time. I love the Dutch presentation. I love the Dutch presenters. With difficult circumstances, I thought it was one of the best. And the song quality, let's keep that going. Let's have more of that next year because, fantastic stuff. So listen, Steve, you take care. And we might have you back to discuss something else in our little show called Spotlight.